Welcome to the Women's Hoop Show. I hope you all are enjoying the March Madness so far because it has been madness. Since we last recorded, there was a double overtime thriller between Maryland and Alabama. I hope you guys watched that game. Sarah Ashley Barker dropped 45 points, including 3 clutch free throws to send it into overtime. Such a great game. But I'm also sure that you saw the news of USC superstar Juju Watkins going down with a knee injury in the opening minutes against Mississippi State. It has been ruled an ACL tear, and I am heartbroken about it. All hoop fans are heartbroken about it. If there was a place to donate a knee, I would be first in line. But USC, they still won that game. Kiki Iriafen had 36 points to secure their spot in the Sweet 16. We'll be watching to see how they rally for Juju and still try to make a deep run in this tournament. But our thoughts, our prayers, our love are all being sent towards Juju because I know that she needs it right now. Hopefully we can lift her up through these positive messages. But on today's episode, we have a Texas legend on the pod. Legend. She was a captain of the 1985-86 undefeated Longhorn squad that won the NCAA championship that year. She's here to talk Madison Booker, how former college athletes need reparations, the future of the WNBA in Austin, and the entirely new developmental league she's starting soon. We have a great show for you today. Let's get into it. Fran Harris, welcome to the Women's Hoop Show. How are you? You are already decked in your burnt orange. You're ready. You're ready to talk some Texas.
Birthday month, March Madness, Texas in the playoffs. So, life is good. I got nothing to complain about. Trust me.
I want to call this my Don't Mess with Texas episode because we are staying in Texas. This is what we're going to talk about. Longhorns, let's go. Let's start with your Texas team now because they are in the Sweet 16 and they had the number 1 overall ranking for the first time in 21 years. They have been balling out. What stands out to you about this Texas team?
I love this Texas team. It is an unconventional Texas team. I'm used to a few more ballers from the offensive standpoint, but Madison Booker and Rory Harmon have been doing an outstanding job. So I'm excited about us. I know that we have what it takes to get to the Final Four and possibly win a championship. But candidly, it's going to take all of the Longhorns to do that. Like, I'm one of those fans that's not delusional. I love my Longhorns, but I also am a baller, so I know what they are up against, and I know they were going to have to play really, really well to win.
Well, that was going to be my next question. If they have what it takes to go all the way, because the Sweet 16 matchup with Tennessee, I have that circled on my bracket. That is going to be such a good game. But I know from a Longhorn standpoint, you're like, I wish they were on the other side of the bracket. I wish we had a little bit of an easier path to the Final Four. You have a tough road.
Yeah, it is very tough. First of all, they got the wrong orange. Let's start there. That's the wrong orange. Burnt orange is the right orange. Anybody debating that, something is wrong with you, go get your head checked. But anyway, back to the game. I'm completely with you, though, because that is a tough game. And again, I said this last night to some friends. Depends on which Tennessee shows up and which Texas shows up. Keep it a whole buck. We've seen Tennessee knock down, 33s, and we've seen Texas be amazing on offense. But we don't know who's going to show up. We really don't know. But I do think that we have one of the tougher routes to get to the Final Four. If Texas doesn't forget that Tennessee can light it up from the three-point line, I think they'll be fine. If they forget that somehow in the first quarter and now Tennessee's up 20, 30 points, it's going to be tough to come back on a team with the stakes that are in place for both teams at this point in the season.
Well, that's the thing with Tennessee is since they can shoot the 3 ball so well, they're never out of a game. Anytime that you saw them come back from being down, it's because they shoot and make so many threes a game. I think I saw a stat where Texas averages about 3 threes made a game.
2.2 threes a game,
where Tennessee, 10 makes a game. And that's where it might come down to how can Texas run them off the 3-point line and if Tennessee can knock them down. It's going to be raining threes either way.
Yeah, it makes a difference. This is one of those games where the three will definitely make a difference. People talk about the changes in the women's game, and the three is certainly one of the things that's changed the complexion of our game. It's like you can be completely dead in the water, and then all of a sudden you knock down a couple of threes and you're right back in it. So I always talk about that kind of that pregame, getting ready for a team, and yeah, the scout, but are you locked into the scout? Because you've been a baller, I'm a player. It's like coach has drilled this in your head for 7 days straight.
Right.
And then you get in the game and then you let somebody do exactly what the scout said not to let them do. So as long as we don't have any of those situations, I think it'll be a very competitive game. I do not like that we're playing Tennessee. I do not like the history and the rivalry between
there's history there.
Yeah, it could not be a better story, though, for the commentators to talk about in this game. I just hope we come out on top.
Can we brag and fangirl over Madison Booker real quick, though? Because back-to-back 20-point games in those first two rounds. And talk about a baller. I mean, she is only a sophomore, but she has put this team on her back. Even last year, when Rory Harmon was out, she was playing point guard. She can be a shooting guard. She can be a forward. She can really be whatever you need her to be. I love her game. What do you like about her game?
Let her cook. Literally, let her cook. That's all I have to say, is that Madison Booker has no limits in her game. She has no deficiencies in her game. I think she holds back. I know that sounds crazy because she can cook, but I believe she's too unselfish. Bookness needs to say, clear out. Claire, I'm posting up this time. I'm going baseline this time. I'm taking the three this time. And when I get cold, when I cool off, then I'll give y'all the ball. I would love to see that Madison Booker. That's reminiscent for me of a Cynthia Cooper in 1997 on the Houston Comets team, like cooking, and understands that that's her role. It's not a ball hog. That's my role, is to put these people out of their misery. So I would love to see a Madison Booker that truly steps into the fullness of her greatness in that game against Tennessee.
Let her cook. I love that. Should be the pregame talk. That's what all Vic Schaefer needs to say. Give the ball to Maddie. Let her cook. I love that so much. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk to you about and just the overall landscape of women's college hoops now is that the NCAA recently announced that women's basketball teams will now be paid for their tournament participation for the first time this year. A pool totals $15 million. Each unit $113,000. Compared to the men's, each unit is $2 million, but I digress. Why do you think it's taken so long to get to this point?
I'm gonna take off my glasses for a second. And NCAA, if y'all watching this show, I got one word for you: reparations. Reparations. I want my check. Write the check. That's all I gotta say to y'all. Write the check. All right. Back to the studio. All right, here we go.
You deserve.
Quit playing with us. Stop playing with us. Like, write the check. No, I am baffled by how long it takes to do the right thing. It's not like it was clear what needed to do. Did not anyone in the decision-making process go, okay, we have the men's tournament, we have the women's tournament. Let's do a chart. How about we do a chart of the things that we're giving the men, and let's do a comparison chart of what the women are getting. And we saw no discrepancies whatsoever, no inadequacies in what they were giving. I'm so sick of them literally coming back on, oh, by the way, we're now going to do this for the women. Completely unacceptable. And yeah, while I'm glad that it finally caught up, we got a lot more to do. I'm knocking on the NCAA's door every week going, okay, what else? We check that one off. Let's check this off.
And it's like, okay, we finally got around to it because everybody was talking about it the last couple years. I don't get why. I'm with you. I don't get why it takes so long to do something right. And it's still not equal. 113,000 to 2 million is a huge gap. And it's so hard to just be like, oh, we're so grateful for these crumbs. You know, like that's also the part that makes me upset.
You notice I didn't use that word. I'm not using that G word as it relates to to what is happening in women's sports and what has needed to happen for so long. I am not going to say, well, we're grateful, we're so excited. No, like we have been picketing, we have been preaching, we have been doing other P words. We have been doing everything we can to get them to understand that we have earned the right to have equitable pay. Like, we've earned equity. Equity is not something that you go, okay, well, I think once you get to this level. No, the time we stepped on the floor, revenue producing sport, then that should have been a part of the deal. So it's the battles, the taxes that women have to pay constantly just get to an equal playing field is ridiculous. And I love that we are more outspoken now. I love that we are publishing our opinions through podcasts and shows, but literally there's a lot more to go.
I want to talk about your Longhorns team because a lot of the false information is that women's basketball is just popular now. And that's not true, because when you were at Texas, the crowds were rocking and you guys were undefeated, 34-0 in that 1985-86 season, led by Hall of Fame coach Jody Conrad. What do you remember about that time? If you go back to it, at what point did you guys kind of figure out, oh, we can go undefeated? Like, this is our year.
Well, what's interesting, to fully appreciate the 1985-86 season, you have to know what happened in the previous season, because otherwise it just seems like, oh, you guys were amazing and you were undefeated. But let me take y'all back for a second. What we're going to do now is go back for just one season, when we were hosting the Final Four. So get that. We are supposed to be hosting the Final Four in the 85 championships. All we have to do is go to Western Kentucky, beat a couple teams, and come back to Austin. We get into our semifinal game against Western Kentucky, the great Clement Haskins. I'm going to tip my hat, and Lily, and I'm like, okay, all right, we're going to beat this team. That's basically what it is. We get down, it's 90-90 with like 2 seconds left. They throw the ball into their post player. She jumps up. I mean, literally, I can see this right now in slow motion. Jumps up, shoots a shot, bucket, 92. We're done. We're not going back to Texas. We're not going to Kansas. We ain't going to Oklahoma. We ain't going nowhere. We are done. So imagine the ride home back to Austin, not as champions. We didn't go to the Mid-East Regional. So that means that we're not playing in the Final Four that we're hosting. And that set the stage for our championship season. That right there was like, next year, it's all business. Next year, don't care that we're number one. We don't care about those polls. We don't care about any of that. Nobody cares about that anyway, except for the fans who like to, pontificate on boards. And we didn't even have boards at that point, message boards at that point. But it was like, this year is all business. And especially for the seniors, because I was a senior, there were 6 of us. This is our last opportunity. We can't be the team that shoulda, coulda, woulda. We have to be the team that does. And so that is the context for that 34-0 team.
Wow. Thank you for that, because and it feels like you were still there. You're still playing defense. You're still there. You could see that shot go in. But that's just the
PTS. I'm having some pizza. Post-traumatic. Thank you for bringing that up. Way to go.
Sorry. See, I tried to jump ahead. I tried to get to the glory, but you got to know what you've been through. That makes it extra sweet. So when you did win and you're able to hoist up that national championship trophy because of what you've been through and because it was your senior season, how did that feel?
Yeah. Absolutely. Everybody wants the glory, but they don't want the gory to get there, And what made the senior season, the 85-86 season, so amazing, again, it was just like perfect storytelling. Our semifinal game in the Final Four that year, guess who we got to smack? Western Kentucky in the semifinal game of the championship. Then the senior matchup, the senior show off in the championship game pitted the best team in the nation against the best player in the nation in Cheryl Miller. So we're playing Coop and Miller for the championship. It could not be a better story because there's always the question of, does the better team win, or does the most outstanding player, can she take her team to the Final Four and to the championship? And I think we answered that sufficiently. Yeah, I think we answered that really, really well. Cheryl Miller was amazing, had a difficult game because of our defense. Coop was going off. But at the end of the day, we just had too many. We were just too good. That's just a fact. Too good. Too many players. Literally, if you think of South Carolina now, I said this in one of my other interviews, like Don Staley's like sending platoons in the game. Like that was us in 1986. It was just like, okay, I'm coming out. I got 20. Somebody else coming in. The person who got MVP for us came off the bench.
Dang.
She was MVP of the Final Four, and she came off the bench. That was Clarissa Davis. So she had 32 versus Western Kentucky and like 20 something against Miller and company. It was crazy.
Well, I feel like you told me before that you won that championship and that was a badge of honor to beat Cheryl Miller. Like, that's how good she was. And I don't know if new fans who are listening or people who can really understand how good Cheryl Miller was. How would you quantify how good she was?
The thing that made Cheryl really, really good, and she will say this, it's like she wasn't the best athlete. She wasn't. I can name 10 people who ran faster, jumped higher, whatever. But nobody played harder than Cheryl. Nobody played harder than her. And nobody played with the kind of passion that she played with. And nobody played, like literally put on the full armor of their cockiness than Cheryl. Nobody did that. So Cheryl's in the game, pumping her fist and pumping her chest and leaping in the air like it was theater. It was absolute theater. And you're just like, okay, all right, okay. But she meant it. Like, it was not a show from a standpoint of like put on. She loved the game so much, and that's what really elevated her. You can't beat someone who truly loves the game. When they walk on the floor, they're saying, okay, God's given me this. And tonight, I'm going to be empty when I leave here. I'm going to be empty. Nobody did that better than Cheryl Miller.
Wow. That is such a great compliment, because a lot of people, you can't say that for a lot of players, that they gave 110% every single time on the floor. I love that you mentioned the theatrics, because just by photos, if she's jumping so high off the ground, she's doing cartwheels on the court. Cheryl Miller was bananas. And that was a part of her scout and her game plan, I'm sure, to just mix it up. Make sure you never know what she's going to do next. But I appreciate that.
Yeah. The other thing that most people don't know is that Cheryl was painfully shy. Wait a minute. What? What? You just said she was theater, like literally. So if you look through some of the history annals of USA national teams, so we played on national teams together in '86. Right after we won the championship, we were on the team together. Me, Coop, Teresa Edwards, Cheryl Miller, like the greatest team of all time. So we're playing in Russia. Cheryl's on that team, and she's painfully shy. She literally won't go out. We would have dinner, but we'd have to be one-on-one. I mean, she didn't like crowds. So it's literally like she goes in the booth before the game because she doesn't like all the fanfare. She just wanted to go and play.
Interesting. Yeah. I would have never guessed that. Never would have guessed that. Wow. Yeah. That Olympic team, by the way, that needs a whole 30 for 30 in itself because of that roster. You guys were balling out there. Going back to your team, let's talk about Coach Jody Conrad real quick, because she is such a legend in our game. How did she impact you while you were there, but also beyond basketball?
Man, I can remember the postcard I got from Texas, recruiting postcard, where Jody was standing with her 2 assistants next to the longhorn, like the literal animal, the longhorn that has the really big longhorns. And that picture is iconic because that was Jody during the 80s, in the 90s. She was one of the most famous coaches in our game. She was one of the most respected coaches in our game. And so that's how people talked about her. They revered her. And so when I decided to come to Texas, like most people don't know, I was this close to going to SMU. I'd signed with, I mean, I'd committed to SMU, but they sucked. They sucked because I was from Dallas. I was only going to SMU because I was from Dallas, and they told me I could shoot all the balls. They were like, "Listen, you can shoot all the balls. Nobody's ever going to catch you. You're going to be the all-time leading scorer in SMU men or women history. That's how many balls you can shoot." And I got to tell you, that was very appealing to me. So my mom had died the year before, and so I was really close to my family, and I was like, "Okay, well, this may be the place I'm going." But at the last second, I decided to take my recruiting visit to Texas. And when I got here, I just fell in love. Like literally, I was hooked. I literally was like, wow, there's no other place I can go. I'm going to get the best of everything here. I'm going to get a great education. I'm going to get the chance to be great. But more importantly, I'm going to get the chance to win championships. And I couldn't say that about any of the other places that I was considering. So I came here because of Jody Conrad, and I came here because of what she said I was going to get to do. Like great coaches, she didn't promise me that I was going to start. She didn't promise me that I was going to play. And I didn't actually for the first like 5 games of the season. I didn't play because she stuck true to her word. And that was like, listen, if you want to shoot all the balls, if you want to score all the points, you probably shouldn't come here because everybody here is great. Everybody here is great. And I had come from a high school where everybody was great. So I was used to that level of competition and expectation. But what I learned is that there's a standard of excellence and you never waver on that standard. That's the greatest lesson that Jody Conrad taught me.
Wow. That is, I feel like I need that on a shirt. I need that on a poster. Jody Conrad is so amazing. I got a chance to talk to her a few Final Fours ago, and just what she could still remember, the play calls and everything from that time. She is a legend. And I love how this is still carrying on. Like we're talking about a Texas team that is in the Sweet 16 now, has a chance as a number 1 seed to go far. And that's because of what Jody Conrad built. That's because of what you built, Fran. Like that is the history that is still carrying on. Is there a sense of pride when you watch those sold out crowds there and everyone talking about your Texas team that you're like, yeah, we were a part of building that?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people really, these, I hate to sound like that person, be like, oh, these kids don't realize what they're, I don't want to be that chick. I don't want to be her, but
but kinda, you have to.
Like, do you understand the shoulders that you stand on? And not just at Texas, like anywhere, LSU, Connecticut, Georgia. I had, I'll talk about Texas, but I had dinner with Teresa Edwards, which is a name that everybody should know. So Teresa and I played on teams together. She was great at Georgia, 5-time Olympian, whatever. And we were talking about like these kids don't know. And I think it is unfortunate that they don't know that somebody else built what the podium that they're standing on. Right. So when I'm at the Texas games and I'm seeing the fanfare and I'm looking at the crowd again come back, and I'm hearing people talk about how great Texas is right now. And I'm saying there's a history here. There is the foundations that we stood on. I wasn't the first person to do anything great here. There were people before me. And I sometimes feel like it should be required reading, watching, and listening. When somebody walks through the doors at a school, at a college, the first thing they should be approached with is a drop-down screen that says, sit down, youngin'. Let me tell you how you got here. Boom. And then now you can put those sneakers on. Now you can put that uniform on and go play. But before that, like this is required of you. You will not step into those shoes, step into that locker room, your fancy locker rooms with the swivel chairs. You will not, without understanding that people had to share rides, people had to share gyms, people had to share uniforms. Like they have no clue about any of that. And I think that is a travesty, that they don't understand their history or their history.
And they can always look up into the rafters because you guys got a banner up there and you could just say, hey, there's a lot that goes into that and you are trying to get another one, but we got it first. So you better know our names. I love that.
Listen, I got a quick Jody Conrad story if you don't mind hearing it.
Please.
So a couple of things. Number one, I was talking to Coach. I was about to like do a speech or whatever. I said, so this is what I'm thinking about doing. This a couple of years ago, whatever. And I said, they asked me to talk about this new climate of women's basketball and the NIL and transfer portal. I said, what do you think about the transfer portal? She says, I think you would have been in it your freshman year. Listen, you are so right. You are so right, because times were tough for freshman Fran. Times were tough. Like I had just come off a championship in high school. Like I was the thing. And now I'm not playing. Like I'm like everybody's playing in the exhibition game. The Water Girls getting in the game in the exhibition game against the Taiwanese national team, but I can't get no runs. Like I was done, right? And I went to her and I said, listen, I think I'm going to leave. I really don't feel like my talents are, this is me in the 80s. I really don't feel like my talents are appreciated here. So she's sitting there. Like, I've never heard Coach curse. I've never heard her swear, right? So never.
Wow.
So she's sitting at her desk and I'm sitting across from her and she goes, she's listening. This is okay. I understand. Just let me say just one thing, before you leave. When I recruited you, you said you wanted to be great. Is that correct? I said, yes. And she says, okay, well, if you want to be great, number one, you have to be pushed and compete against people who are as great as you are or greater. So that's that. And number two, you have to let me coach you.
Mm.
And if you are not willing to be coached, there's nothing here. There's nothing. I can't do my job. You can't do your job of becoming great and I said, wow. And it was just this moment of silence. Like I had never thought about that. You do give your coach permission to coach you.
Mm.
That's the only way you get to the next level. Like you can't push a player that will not be pushed. Can't do it. So she said, so if you will let me coach you, then I guarantee you all the things that you wrote down that you wanted to achieve, I guarantee you will achieve most of those. And she was absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Wow. So she didn't let you go. You tried to still go before the transfer portal. She said, oh, no.
Okay, you can leave. Like, we're not going to force you to stay. But before you go, let me add this one thing. Let me say this one thing to you. And I was like, okay. And so clearly I stayed.
Well, we are all thankful that you did because you are part of the lore of the Texas women's basketball Longhorns. And I love how you said, you're from Texas, you won a high school championship, you won a college championship in Texas, and then the WNBA comes calling and you get to stay in Texas, you get to go to the Houston Comets and win the first championship of the WNBA with the Houston Comets. You're on a team with Tina Thompson, Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops. And I'm glad Coop wasn't too. Maybe did she get over you beating her in the national championship game, or was that still a contention there?
That is so great. Like when I talked to Coop about that, she's like, "Okay, why are you bringing that up? That's unnecessary roughness. Stop bringing that up. Don't do that."
You kind of have to. You have to hold it over just a little bit. But then you make up because you get to win a WNBA championship together with the Houston Comets. I love that. She was your point guard. Talk about that and just the explosion of what it was like to be a part of this thing called the WNBA and then to win it all, the first go out.
Again, context for the championship is a must, right? So when Coop and I graduated same year, there was no WNBA. There was nothing. So you had to take your talents overseas. You had to go Italy, Turkey, some god-awful places. I mean, we played in Italy, and that wasn't a bad place. That was a great place. But think about that. There was no place. You had to go 3,000-4,000, sometimes more than that, miles away from home to just continue your career. So when the WNBA started, first of all, Coop was in Italy. We know that. But I honestly, because I didn't make the 88 Olympic team, I broke up with basketball. So I retired from basketball when I was 23. So I was the last person cut from the 88 Olympic team. So I was pissed about the politics. I'm going to keep it a buck. That's anybody knows me. They know I'm always keeping a buck. Like I was like, I'm done with that. They were like, oh, well, you should wait till 92. Nope, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. Y'all can do something else. I'm not doing that. So I literally was retired. And then so for 8 years, for the first few years of my divorce with basketball, I didn't play basketball at all. I called for ESPN. And then you know how when you break up with somebody, you're like, okay, I'll talk to you a little bit. So I started playing hoop it up. I started doing 3-on-3 hoop it up. I was like, okay, you know, you broke my heart, but we gonna see what we can do. We gonna see if we can still be compatible or whatever. And then I was winning all the hoop it up stuff. And then all of a sudden, the WNBA, I heard that they were launching a league. So I called the WNBA and I said, hey, I hear there's a league happening. I'm very interested. And they were like, okay, we know who you are because you played at Texas and, you know, all the USA national teams, whatever. But like, that was 1988. Like, what's your interest? Are you interested in coaching? We know you're an ESPN broadcasters. Are you interested in calling again? They were baffled. Like, it's been 8 years, girl. What you talking about? It was literally, that was the bubble, the the bubble that popped up. Even though those weren't the words that they used, they were like, yes, Fran Harris, of course we know who you are. But hasn't it been a while? Have you been playing overseas? Where have you been? I said, okay, you know, I see how y'all acting. I see how y'all acting. Okay, you know what? If y'all want to act that way, just tell me where the tryouts are and I'll take it from here. And they were like, okay. Call Van Chancellor. He's having a tryout on Mother's Day. And I'm sure he'll let you come into your tryout. So fast forward, I go to tryouts on Mother's Day in Houston, 1997. 250 women have been there over the weekend. And
whoa.
like, you don't need to come on Saturday, just come on Sunday. But when I got there on Sunday, still like 100 women plus women there. I watched on Saturday, tons of people, and then I played on Sunday. And so there were 250 plus women trying out for 2 spots. Okay, let's do the math real quick.
Oh my goodness.
The probability of someone who had not played for 8 plus years, not competitive, not overseas. I did go like maybe 60 days before the tryout. I got a gig in Switzerland. So literally, I left Texas to play the last part of a season in Switzerland so I could get some stats and some, but I hadn't played in 8 years. So walking into those tryouts was just like walking into a USA national team tryout, because I don't know if you've seen those pictures, but I mean, it's like 400 women.
Yeah, a lot of players.
Yes. And then we'd get down and I was always on the team or like right there at the end. So I knew how to try out. I know how to get a coach's attention. And that's all I did. I approached it like it was a USA national team from back in the day. Like, hey, you walk in there, you know what you do well. You know how to shine. You know what coaches love. That's what I did. And I got one of those 2 spots.
I am speechless. That is a crazy story. 250 players going for 2 spots, and you got one of those spots. And then you win a championship. Like, it's not just, oh, I was on the team. You get to win a championship with a legendary roster. Yeah, what were those early, what do you remember, I guess, from those early WNBA years? Because you played 2 years, right? And being able to see the growth, because you're coming from Texas, you're like, I know what it's like to play in front of thousands of people. Yeah. But Houston had a strong fan base. So what was that like to be able to see that again so many years later in a professional avenue in America?
It was crazy. First of all, that my family and fans from Texas in my college career actually got to see me play in Texas. So when you said that, it's like a wave of just like true gratitude kind of flushed over me, because that was special. It's not like I had to go off somewhere and they weren't like legit. The people who saw me play in Austin came to see me play in Houston. And so that was really, really fun. And I remember just how giddy Cynthia and I were, because hey, we came from the older regimes. Like I was 31, she was 33 or whatever. So we were still really young at that point. So it wasn't like, you know, you're talking about 60-year-olds walking in the gym trying to hoop. It was like we were in our prime. People don't know unless you hoop that your 30s, you are so fired. Like, you know what you're doing. You got your body together. Like that is the peak of your careers, those early 30s. So we felt like we were in the best position to vie for a championship. But just seeing all the fandom, just literally walking into Houston and seeing 16,000 people at a game on a Tuesday was bananas.
Wow.
Like, used to that in Texas, but the people that I was playing with weren't used to that. They didn't know that that's how people show up in Texas for women's basketball. And so that was extremely exciting. It was exciting to see. Whoa, it's kind of like, finally, y'all get to
Mm-hmm.
see what we've known forever is that the game has always been litty. It's always been, there's always been talent. We haven't had the eyeballs, we haven't had the exposure, we haven't had the investment. But if all of that had been there in the late 80s, then we would be seeing, we would experience what we're experiencing now in the late 80s. But everything has its time. Everything has its time, and basketball finally matriculated to the point where other people outside of our familial circles said, okay, maybe there's something there. Where you think there's something there. Um, but it was very cool to just see the competition. And of course, as you know, there were two leagues at the time. And for one more year, there were two. There was the ABL and there was the WNBA, which
Mm-hmm.
was just absolutely crazy.
That was crazy. That's a story for another day, because that was a wild time. But I do want to say, because you mentioned investment, and I know that you also walked into that arena and you had your business hat on too, of potentially being an owner one day. And I wanted to quickly ask you about, Texas being this place for women's basketball and how they show up. And I know you have a bid for a WNBA team to be in Austin. Why is this time the right time for the WNBA to be in Austin, and what kind of inspired you to go down that path?
So, you hit it. The year that Houston debuted in the WNBA, I remember like stretching on the floor and just looking around the arena and thinking, this is cool. But what's cooler were the people who were along the sidelines. None of them looked like me. None of them looked like me unless they were professional athletes. And none of the professional athletes were owners. Even the
Mm,
former professional athletes were not owners. And I remember I just grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And so we always talked about ownership. We always talked about, yeah, it's good. Participation is good, but ownership is better. If you got to choose, ownership is better. And so I'm looking around at the court side and the sidelines, and I'm just like, one day I want to make sure that I'm participating in this thing that I'm helping to build. And we weren't trained as African American families in general to think that way. To think you can build the business because we were the product, but you can also own the business. But
mm,
because everybody else got such a huge start, we talk about this 400-year start that people got, and we didn't. Specifically, Black folks did not get because we were enslaved. We're catching up, and so the fastest way to catch up for generational wealth is ownership.
mm,
And so I'm thinking that in 1997, like one day I want to own a team, a sports team. And why not be the sports league that I actually helped to build that product for? So we finally, got the right people around the table. I put together a great group of investors to bring a team to Austin because the time was right for Austin, because Austin took a dip just like the W did, right? So the W, great fanfare. And then all of a sudden in the adolescent years of the W, nobody was coming to the games because
mm-hmm.
it wasn't they weren't um, marketing the product properly. So same thing in Austin. So we were up here, 10,000, 12,000 fans. Then we dropped to here. Literally nobody was coming to the games. For me to sit in what was then the Frank Irwin Center and to see 1,100 people in there, the same building that we sold out every night, was
Wow.
it was heartbreaking. But again, nobody was marketing the product. It's literally parallel with what was happening in the WNBA. There was no marketing. And so we hired Coach Vic Schaefer. And of course, you put a good product on the floor. Austin is a community, it's a market that checks all the boxes that the W likes. It's expensive as hell. It is, people have disposable income. It's a sports crazy town. It doesn't have a lot of sports teams. So it's checking all the boxes. I'm noticing that. I'm talking to Kathy. I've talked to the legal department. I'm like, hey, what are we looking for? So when I realized that we checked all of that off, I knew that we'd have a good chance to get a team. And as we got closer to making our bid, I also noticed that NBA owners decided that they wanted to own teams all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I said it. Like, the fact of the matter is, when I started talking to the WNBA in the fall of 2023 about bringing a team to Austin, there were no NBA teams at the table. Zero.
Wow.
And it wasn't until the explosive spring of 2024 that they sat up and said, wait a minute, hold up, wait a minute, hold up. That's how I envision NBA owners. That's how I envision
I think that's spot on.
Right? Hold up, wait a minute, because all of a sudden they were at the table. So I get it. You know, the NBA invested heavily in the WNBA. So to your point, like I never take off my business hat. I can be emotional about the W and what I want, and two things can be true, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm emotional about my bid. I believe Austin is the right place, but I also get that the NBA invested heavily in the WNBA, and Adam Silver, Kathy Engelbert, whatever, whoever's making the decision, want them to eat, get their money. I get it. So I wasn't shocked when they said that Cleveland was going to be the 16th team, but I was very disappointed. I was very disappointed because I'm not sure Cleveland's the right place for the WNBA. But I think that the W thinks, or the NBA, because we're never sure who's talking, I think that right now, given how well women's sports are doing and how well women's basketball is doing, I think that the prevailing thought is that we can dump a WNBA team anywhere and it will do well. I think that's what they.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So it's not, you know, do I think they're going to do extremely well in Cleveland? I truly hope so, because it just keeps making the business case strong for what I want to do in Austin.
Does that, if you don't get the 16th bid, what is the next step? Because I know there's a lot of other cities that are putting bids out there. Are you just vying for that 17th? Are you vying for that 18th spot? Do you keep putting your name in the hat? What happens next? Okay.
That's exactly it. So, you know, everybody was building up to the 16th, which Cleveland got. And now there's the 17th and 18th. And we're hearing murmurs that those will also go to NBA owners. That's kind of what we're hearing. That's what the back channels are saying. But you never know. You know, you never know. We've made it very clear that we are very interested in a WNBA team. They know about Austin. They know what we know about Austin. So the decision will probably come down to, you know, how many more NBA teams want to play. I mean, that's the unfortunate, for independent cities, that's an unfortunate reality, is that our biggest competition is not each other. Like, I'm not competing against Kansas City or Nashville or whoever, all the other independent. I'm competing against owners who have all the infrastructure, all the money, right? That's who we're competing with. Now, fortunately, on our bid team, we were as close to an NBA owned franchise as anybody, because we had Mark Lazary, who owned the Bucks. So our money's long. I mean, we literally were very competitive from a resources standpoint, but we're not an NBA franchise. So everything is kind of going that way. So we'll see. We'll never know. I might get a call after this and be like, hey, y'all want number 19? Y'all want 18? Because if y'all want it, y'all can get in there. We outside. NBA, WNBA, we outside. We're ready. So we again, don't get ready. Stay ready. So we are ready to, if they call and go, hey, we letting y'all in, because it's kind of like playing double dutch. That's what I feel like right now. Like,
just waiting your turn.
And you're trying to get in. You're like, okay. So, but we'll be ready. We're excited. We're gonna stay ready.
Keep hope alive, Texas.
Right.
A W team is coming back. And I love to, you know, Houston was a huge franchise, but this is something different and a chance to bring something new to Texas, a different part of Texas and Austin. Fingers crossed. I would love to see how that pans out. But overall, I'm happy that the WNBA is growing in general, but would love to see a team in Austin. And would they have, one quick question, would they be orange? Would they have the burnt orange? No. Okay. Something separate.
This is reserved for Texas.
Reserve. On reserve.
It's on reserve. We need to move away from that branding, but the university has been extremely supportive. ADs have been super supportive. So we know we'll have their support, but we will not have their color. Okay?
Got it.
Okay.
Well, plot twist, she said I didn't get a team, so I'm going to make my own league. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, it's called Exalt. launching next April. It is a developmental league. It's pro grassroots. Yeah, boo boo.
So it is a developmental league. And give us the quick elevator pitch on it, because I think that is something that has been talked about for the WNBA for a very long time. There's not a G League to pull players from. If you don't get picked up in training camp, there's not a place for you to go. You have to go overseas and wait by the phone and wait for your number to be called. So a developmental WNBA league is very important. Tell us about it.
So literally, you just cracked the surface of it. There are 28,000 women playing basketball in the United States. 28,000 this year.
Wow.
If you are a senior and you don't get one of those, what we want to be generous and say maybe 10 slots in the WNBA, maybe 10 slots overseas, which you're probably not going to get. Let's keep it a whole buck, because there's so much supply, right? So 28,000 women playing basketball. Percentage of those people are graduating. If you don't make it to the WNBA or overseas, you have to retire from basketball. It's like 30 years ago.
I was going to say, that was a little bit like your story. It's the same thing. That hasn't changed. Wow.
Changed. So that's the pitch, is we're giving these women who don't have the opportunity to continue their careers, the opportunity to continue their careers. They're professional women's basketball players. And so they should have somewhere to play. And that's the problem that we're solving. We're solving the problem of thousands of very good college women's basketball players not having a place to play if they don't make it to the W and if they don't play overseas. And you can say, well, what about Unrivaled? That's the best of the W. Those are the same players. What about AU? That's the W in overseas. So literally, this is untapped territory. So we're literally going to launch a league where there are multiple teams. I won't give out our entire business model, but it's litty. It's amazing. Have had some great conversations. We're going to be in regional places. So it's not just in one place. We're not doing the Unrivaled thing.
Okay.
But we are doing fun things around the country so that we can be in hotbed markets of women's basketball. And people can keep watching the women that they're watching right now. They never see these women again. If they don't make it, they never see them again. They never hear from them again. We're fixing that. And it's called Exalt.
Exalt. That is so good, Fran Harris. Oh my God, because that is exactly what we need. Now, let me ask you this. Is the goal to be a feeder to the league, that if somebody goes down and they're looking for a player, they can look at Exalt, who's the top scorers, or we have scouts looking at those games, and then, hey, we're going to pluck from your team, or a two-way contract even, maybe that's the future, that we can kind of dip into that to bring the talent to the WNBA.
Absolutely. And then, think about all the players. I mean, think about the early 30-year-olds or the late 29-year-olds who have literally fallen off the radar because they couldn't keep playing. They couldn't get a job. They're now working wherever they're working now. Those players get to come back into the fold. So now the W's overseas, just general, and this is not just for the W, not just for overseas, it's for the women. It's so that you can keep playing. But now think about the pool of players that we get to tap into who haven't been able to play or haven't had a place to play, period. So now it makes the W more competitive. It does, because you're not, who's going to take my spot? Who's literally going to take that spot? Well, we saw this little woman over, played in, South Carolina, who is balling.
Yeah.
So now those players that have fallen off, amazing players, have the opportunity to continue that. And all of our basketball gets better. The W gets better. Overseas gets better. In college gets better. Because now women are not thinking, well, when I graduate, I don't have anything to do anyway. I'm not going to make it to the WNBA. No, you can play in Exalt. And there will be a spot for you, because we will take over the United States. Take over. And then our grassroots, obviously, is to build the junior, the high school, that kind of thing. So that, because one day, high school players will go pro, right? You already know that.
Yes, we're almost there. Yeah.
Yeah. No close to being there. Well, where are they going? If they don't have to go to college, I'm just saying there's some scenarios here that we're going to be feeling the need for.
The thing that is my favorite thing is options. I
Yes.
want women's basketball players to have
Yes.
options. And this is another option for them. We've talked about Unrivaled. We've talked about Athletes Unlimited, the W. Now you have another option. And that's my favorite song. I love that. So thank you for providing that. Can't wait to hear more about that. And Hook 'em. Thanks so much for being here, Fran Harris. I appreciate you. The Women's Hoop Show is an Odyssey original podcast hosted by me, Jordan Robinson. Our producer is Phil Sweetek. Our video team is led by Kurt Courtney and includes Tim Meikle, Evan Cox, Allison Jeffrey, and Lauren Vieira. Our executive producers are Greg Holtzman, Asha Saluja, Danny Freisinger, Maddie Sprunkheiser, and Leah Reese-Dennis. And special thanks to Moira Curran and Josephina Francis.